Okay, I'm testing. Can everyone hear me? Sound okay? Okay. Hi, my name is Karin Schlee, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm here to talk to you about more than you ever wanted to know about your inner critic. Funny thing is, this morning, as I was preparing for this talk, I was starting to run through all the things that could go horribly wrong during this talk, and then I told myself, pull it together, rein it in, because you're supposed to be talking about the inner critic and how you get around that, and you want to be optimistic, And so I thought, okay, let me come up with something that's optimistic. And so, did any of you watch the Olympics? Okay. I immediately thought of Nathan Chen, the figure skater, and I was like, okay, think of Nathan Chen. He went into the Olympics his first time, and they were like, he's going to be a gold medalist, he's going to definitely get a medal, and his very first performance, he completely flopped. He failed all kinds of jumps and blew it. And he dropped to like 17th in the standings. And so then I read that he told himself, well, it's over. I can't win. No worries now. So he relaxed and said, I'm just going to soak in these Olympics and just go out there and have some fun. And he ended up in the top 3 during the competition and ended up as 4th place at the end. And so, welcome to the world of my inner critic, because I'm telling myself, maybe I'll just flop really early on, and I'll calm down, and I'll be relaxed, and then I can kill it like Nathan Chen did. So the inner critic, it's the big obstacle that keeps most of us stuck in a holding pattern. If you've ever believed you're not smart enough, brave enough, or ready to pursue your dreams, I hope to change that today. Many of us have said, I'm my own worst critic. We know that feeling. And I'm here to convince you that just because you have that inner voice does not mean that it needs to be in the driver's seat steering your life. You can learn to manage your inner critic, expand your confidence, and then take action toward the big goals in your life. Before I go further, just a few things. I'll try to leave time at the end for questions. And so if you could jot them down and hold on to them, I'd appreciate it. Also, I have a couple of clipboards in the back. If you're interested... Ooh. Okay. Slightly, yeah. They were kind of very low. It's more comfortable without them. I asked for them to be lowered. So I have a couple of clipboards in the back. If you're interested in getting any information from me about the inner critic or other talks, yeah, I think that's good. Can you do low? A little bit? Yeah, it got too dark, but a little low yet. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Then I can send you information if I do future workshops and talks and all of that, and I'll keep you posted. So a little bit about me. I received my doctorate here at Stony Brook. That's when my interest in women's issues began. My graduate research projects were focused on mental health issues among women who were victims of domestic abuse. And in the 2 decades since then, I've been a therapist here in Stony Brook, and I've worked with countless women who had incredible capabilities and potential, but they were more attuned to their perceived deficits and weaknesses. What I teach about the inner critic and how to alter that, its effect on you, is partly informed by the lessons I've learned managing my own. Many know I'm a psychologist, but I'm also a recovering perfectionist and procrastinator. Well, I was recovering until about 5 months ago when I was invited to do this talk, and then I suffered a major relapse. Why? Because doing a talk like this is something that my inner critic tells me that I'm not ready for, and it tells me that repeatedly and loudly. Why did I choose to discuss the inner critic at a leadership symposium? Well, I read that leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. That involves taking your ideas, following them through to completion, and directing others in that process. So, and here's my flub, because I don't know how, he said that this switch would, in the middle. Oh, there we go. Aha. So here's an ideal system of how it works, taking your idea to successful completion. Our big ideas are all conceived up in the think tank, which I can't do the pointer, so never mind. That's where we think of the books we like to write or grant proposals, the inventions we want to create to solve that problem no one's fixed, businesses we'd like to launch. Next, we take that idea and we start working on it, writing, drawing, building, creating and bringing that thing to life. Then we roll that creation out and we share it with others. They in turn give us feedback. It's a mixture usually of those who love it and those who hate it. Then we go back to the drawing board, back to the think tank, and we bring in and use what was constructive and helpful for our idea. We weed out what's not helpful, and we create the new and improved version of our idea. We roll it back out again, and the loop goes on and on. That's how success with ideas happens. As long as that wheel keeps turning, we're on our way. Why is that not working? Okay. I wish I could say that when I was invited to do this talk, my think tank had clear blue skies, and that wheel was just turning and churning out great ideas of what I would talk about today. Wouldn't that be nice? But instead, it looked a little bit like this. The invite kicked off a tornado of ideas and fears in my mind that persisted pretty much right up till this morning with the Nathan Chen story. Why did I agree to do this? They're going to be bored to tears. Oh my God, look under the bed. That is so dusty. How could I have ignored that for 5 years? I really need to take apart this king bed and vacuum all of that, which I definitely did. I better do it right now. So you see, when my inner critic gets loud, then a procrastinator kicks in and derails me from my efforts to get to work. Things I've been ignoring, like vacuuming the basement stairs I did. I cleaned my oven. I've exercised my dogs for double the amount of time I usually do. There's endless distractions that the procrastinator throws in my way because it's a very sneaky and persuasive character. Are any of you familiar with the procrastinator? Okay. When the inner critic enters the system, this thing does not want to cooperate with me. Oh, there we go. When the inner critic enters the system, it's literally the monkey wrench thrown in the works. A powerful inner critic can block you every step of the way. You get a great idea, but your inner critic says, no way, you're not good enough. So it just remains a dream. Or you start writing and designing and creating, but you keep it secret. You keep it hidden away because your inner critic says you're going to look like a fool if you show that to anyone. If you pass the first 2 hurdles and share your creation, but the negative feedback is too much for you, the inner critic says, see, I told you you couldn't do it. You failed, abort mission, retreat. Facing rejection is tough. Author J.K. Rowling had her share of rejection. She said, I wasn't going to give up until every single publisher turned me down, and often I feared that would happen. Her first Harry Potter book was rejected 12 times before it was picked up. Believe it or not, even Walt Disney received lots of rejection. At 22, he was fired from a newspaper for, of all things, not being creative enough. For years, he dreamed of building Disneyland, but his studio was in debt. He pitched the idea to major TV networks and offered them part ownership of Disneyland if they'd agree to air his Disney programs and provide the funding he needed. Every network rejected him, and they doubted that his theme park would succeed. He persisted, though. He sold a vacation home, he borrowed from his life insurance policy, and from friends and family and even his own employees. He formed a team to design a rendering of the park, and he went back to those the TV stations. And then ABC gave him a contract. Now there are 12 Disney theme parks across the globe. All are incredibly successful and ever expanding. One last example, Michael Jordan. You may already know this one. This is a good one. He said, I missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed it. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Failure and persistence are a part of every journey to success. But this is a major hurdle when the inner critic is in the driver's seat. So what is the inner critic? It's that voice inside of you that's constantly reminding you, don't say that, it'll sound stupid. That's too big of a risk, don't do it. Don't try anything new, you'll make a fool of yourself. You can't write a book or a song. You have nothing new to say that others haven't said already. An artist named Steve Chapman gave a TED Talk that was great about his inner critic. It told him that he was unworthy to even go on stage and talk about it unless he could tell the world that he slayed that inner critic in 3 simple steps to inner bliss. I thought the same thing myself, too. I thought, how do I go up there and talk to them about the inner critic while I'm still struggling with it? But his words and his talk freed me from that worry. We can share how we manage it and how we get around it. It's an ongoing process. He described his process as more like dancing with it. Some people have talked about quieting it or befriending it. I feel like mine is more like testing it. When it says to me, you can't do that, I say, we'll just see about that. I liked his definition of the inner critic, that it's our idealized sense of self. It's an unattainable, imagined, perfect vision of us that never fails and is adored by others because we're a master at literally everything. It stifles creativity and spontaneity and replaces them with self-doubt, comparisons, and judgments. And these cause us to distrust our intuition and our instincts. The bottom line is we just can't trust it. It's not honest with us. The inner critic is not really concerned with accuracy. Its main focus is self-protection. In the path of being a leader and pursuing your success, you will encounter risks and uncomfortable challenges. The inner critic's job is to keep you safe from those. So I want to arm you with the ability to recognize its lies. Let's start with the biggest lie the inner critic has already convinced many of us to believe. This belief is the core of its power. There's something inherently wrong, different, or insufficient about me. This lie undermines everything we think and do. Yet we cling to it and have a hard time letting it go. The impact of this lie, I'm convinced I'm inadequate. No effort will change that. So I instead delay, I procrastinate. I'll never fail because I'll never try. Some get stuck in this limbo indefinitely. In fact, there was a study done with seniors at the end of their lives, asking them what was the biggest regret they had in life. The biggest, most common regret that they mentioned was not the things that they did in their lives, not the mistakes. It was the things they didn't do, the things that they didn't have the courage to try and to go head toward. Up till now, you might have been telling yourself, successful people are just different from me. They're smarter, they're more talented, they're more confident. That's why I'll never be among them. I have 2 quotes to share that might surprise you. They're from 2 well-known actors with very successful careers. Let's see if you can guess the first one. No matter what we've done, there comes a point when you think, how did I get here? When are they going to discover that I am in fact a fraud and take everything away from me? I do not know why I'm doing this wrong. Maybe it's because I'm not by the thing. Oh, there we go. It's a high wire act that we all walk. Any guesses so far about that person? He's probably one of the highest paid actors in the country, and yet he struggles with self-doubt. I'll give you some hints. He was in Apollo 13, Sully, and Captain Phillips. Yes. Tom Hanks fears that you're going to figure out he's a fraud. The second quote is from an actress. I'm not sure why I'm doing this. Do you know why I'm not getting this to work, Sue? It just won't. There we go. Okay. I see fear as this little creature that lives in my life all the time, and I can either pay it attention and not get anything done, or I can march ahead and just ignore it. So this actress gives herself pep talks to overcome her fears. She has to remind herself that artistry is not about success. It's more about having the courage to put new ideas out into the world. Some hints are she was in Big Little Lies, Legally Blonde, and she's in the new movie out with Oprah. Yes, Reese Witherspoon has to push past her fears and ignore them in order to get work done. And by the way, the original book, Wrinkle in Time, was rejected by 26 publishers. Now it's a timeless favorite and a big movie. So I want to arm you to recognize the chain reaction that ends with you stuck in a stalemate. A new opportunity or a challenge typically sparks it off. We ask ourselves, am I ready for this? And this self-evaluation triggers our fear of embarrassment and rejection. The reflex of the brain is to wake up your inner critic. It says, you're not good enough yet, wait, prepare more, stay in the comfort zone. The brain conjures all the ways we're not ready and all the things that can possibly go wrong. In turn, we're stuck. We decline opportunities, we avoid risks, fly under the radar, and we keep quiet. Okay, so that's a big downer, and it's time for a little inner critic humor about self-evaluation. The inner critic is great at keeping us humble. Just when we're having a good day or a confident moment, this happens. Well, my day was going okay, but then I remembered something stupid I did when I was 14. I think we've all been there. Okay, so back to business. The most frequent question that my clients ask me is, why am I stuck like this? Why am I so self-critical? If only it were a simple answer. I thought an iceberg would be a good way to illustrate this. On the surface level, we're aware of the self-criticism from the critic. We often buy into it and we conclude, okay, so I suck. But under the surface, there's lots of things swirling in the mix. What else fuels our self-criticism? Things like our early lessons at home, in society, experiences of vulnerability, perfectionism, shame. At the bottom, you see the term self-consciousness. It's something shared by all humans, and it has a key role in this. Last month, the New York Times had an article about social anxiety, and it made a great point about self-consciousness that I had to use. Self-consciousness does not exist to torture you. It exists to help you learn. When you hear phrases like, stop being so self-conscious, it seems to imply that it's an anxious thing or a critical thing. But actually, self-consciousness is neutral. The definition I found, having knowledge of one's existence and oneself as a conscious being. Simply stated, it's awareness of ourself and our actions. So then what goes awry? Well, there's a complex mixture of things that play into the inner critic. We can only skim the surface of them today. But I tried to lay them out in a way that would make them at least digestible. So we start with our self-consciousness and our human biology. There's good news and bad news about our wiring. Well, let's get the bad news out of the way first. As you know, our human wiring is called our nervous system. The operative word there is nervous. We're hardwired for safety and survival. Our instincts are for self-protection and preservation. Because of this, we tend to avoid unfamiliar things that challenge our sense of safety and comfort. Studies show that our brain has a negativity bias. Many who have tried to explain how it works compare it to Velcro and Teflon. Our brain with negative sticks strongly like it does with Velcro. With positive, it's like Teflon. They slide right off. The brain prioritizes its attention on negatives to keep us safe. As a result, we're 2 times more sensitive to failures than to gains, and we predict worst-case scenarios more than success. So what's our launch pad into life? A system that's keenly tuned into vulnerability. Now we add our life experiences. Obviously, direct messages from our caregivers can teach children that we're not good enough, that we're unworthy, we're unlovable, and that heightens our fear of criticism and rejection. Or if we're lucky, we have messages that are supportive, encouraging, and reassuring, and that leads us to a more confident style. But even deeper than words is our bond with the person who raised us. Research shows that our earliest experiences with our caregiver and attachment have a big impact on our view of risk and on our confidence. If we had a secure attachment, which means that our caregiver was nurturing, responsive, attentive, reliable, we tend to have more courage to explore the world and handle stress. If our attachment was insecure, meaning our caregiver was absent, negligent, not responsive, or even worse, abusive, our default wiring system gets strengthened, and we are more geared towards self-protection and avoiding things we fear and keeping ourselves safe. Society's messages about gender stereotypes also affect us. Boys are taught to be competitive and assertive and climb the ladder to success, to be strong and decisive. Women are told not to be too opinionated, not to be too assertive or too confident. In fact, at the Harvard Business School, women who were interviewed said socially they felt they had to choose between being assertive or popular, because you can't be both. Women learn to censor themselves and screen out a lot more. That's that inner critic working, telling you, don't show that. That's not going to be viewed favorably. When you combine all these things, then the paths diverge. Some head on the path of life feeling worthy and capable, with an encouraging voice inside that tells them they can try new things and take on challenges, while others believe the lie that they're incapable and deficient, and they hear the inner critic constantly telling them, avoid tasks, avoid risks, and stay in your safe zone. So what can we do about the inner critic? I know that's what you're here for. That's the big part we want to learn. I wish I could say that a simple surgical removal would do the trick. Congratulations, we removed your inner critic. Sadly, this option does not exist. Okay, so you know the bad news about your wiring. We have this darn nervous system that makes us avoidant of unfamiliar things and tries to protect us from risk. But now the good news, neuroplasticity. That means you can rewire or retrain your brain. We're not doomed by our default wiring. Studies done at places like Harvard and Yale prove that the brain is capable of being retrained, even out of old fears and beliefs that have been with us for decades. Consistent practice is key. There's a saying they use, the neurologists, cells that fire together, wire together. With practice, you can literally strengthen new neural pathways and weaken the old ones. This allows for new ways of thinking and acting to become your new normal. So let's move to a few of my favorite strategies for managing your inner critic. And this doesn't want to work again. Okay, there we go. In my practice, I offer a lot of antidotes for the inner critic. I'll start briefly with the two I can't cover today because they would require talks of their own. And I'm actually really glad that Dr. Gallagher gave time to some mindfulness because I don't have enough time to cover that fully. But mindfulness and self-compassion are, if you want to rewire your brain to become non-judgmental and supportive of yourself, those two will both help you get there. They involve consistent practice and provide long-term effects. Unfortunately, there's no quick way to teach them. So Dr. Gallagher talked about Calm.com, the app, and she talked about Headspace. I have a subscription to Headspace. It's about $14 a month. For me, it's worth it. Helped me be able to talk today. Did a little bit of it during her talk. I also came across, when I was preparing for this, another app that I think you should try. It's called Pacifica. And so in the App Store, that's how it looks. It actually is a free download that offers, one of its free exercises is called Quieting the Inner Critic. It's only 8 minutes long, and you can do it as many times as you want. So if you want, you can give that a try. I showed the middle picture so you can see that once you load it, you click on that green button, Meditate, and that will take you to the categories of the exercises. You scroll all the way down, the last category is inner strength. Sometimes it's hard to find and navigate your way through these things. So if you go all the way down to inner strength, you'll see there, quieting the inner critic. So the ones below it, you'll see have the little locks. You have to pay for those, but this one happens to be free. So if you want to get a taste of mindfulness, that's a good way to do it. Another idea, which is really wild timing, is that I just learned that if you work here at Stony Brook, the EAP program this week on Friday is kicking off an 8-week program teaching mindfulness. Okay, come on. I do not, oh, there we go. So I thought I would just include some information if you're interested in this. 8 weeks is definitely more reasonable for learning all you need to know about mindfulness. And so there's a contact number, there's the Stony Brook website up there, and this other website of the people who are collaborating to teach the course. So you might want to strike while the iron's hot and look into that. So back to the strategies, I'd like to start with the most powerful strategy. I do not know what I'm doing wrong here. Oh, there we go. In orange on top. Dr. Gallagher talked a little bit about mindset, and one of the fears I had was that I'm going to overlap too much with people who are sharing their ideas. But I think that luckily our overlaps sort of reinforce one another and are just slightly different. So what I'm going to talk about failure is, she talked about different kinds of mindset like the victim and the warrior. So Failure and this particular strategy will pull the rug right out from your inner critic. There's a great example that I want to use to illustrate this. I'm sure you've all heard of spandex, women's undergarments. But have you ever heard of Sarah Blakely, the CEO? She never took one business class, and she had no experience in the fashion retail industry. Yet, she created a $1 billion hosiery company. In fact, in 2012, she was the world's youngest self-made female billionaire at the age of 41. How? Thanks to neuroplasticity. She had early lessons that started her rewiring about risk and failure. She remembers saying, "Dad, I tried out for this thing and I was horrible." And he would high-five her and say, "Way to go." If she didn't fail at something that week, her dad was actually disappointed. My dad always encouraged me to fail, and because of this, he gave me the gift of retraining my thinking about failure. Failure for me became it wasn't about not trying. Failure for me became about not trying. It wasn't about the outcome. So for her, failure wasn't embarrassing. It wasn't scary. She learned there was value in failure. It was part of the learning process. She learned that she didn't have to fear worrying about not being good enough, and that didn't dictate her actions or her decisions. So I think that that's a great example of how failure and how your mindset about it can help you to not let the inner critic rule. The next method has to do with some methods to boost confidence. Confidence has a few ingredients in it. It's the belief that you're valuable and capable, and mixed with that is the optimism that you have from your certainty in your abilities. That brings to my points today another shift in mindset that can help you sidestep your inner critic. It's the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And now Dr. Gallagher earlier talked about the victim and the warrior, and I think that maps on really well to what I'm talking about. If you have a fixed mindset, you believe that your abilities and talents are fixed at birth. You're either capable and talented or you're not. This works against confidence, and it empowers your inner critic. If you don't do well at something, the inner critic tells you right away, obviously you can't do this, you should quit. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Many people quit way too early in the process. A growth mindset, on the other hand, focuses on the ability to learn. Talents and abilities can be improved through efforts and practice. Even if you're not good at something initially, you believe you can improve. A shift to this mindset boosts your confidence, and it helps to quiet your inner critic. You can talk back and say, just give me time. I'm learning. I'll get there. With a growth mindset, confidence is something you can develop over time. I heard earlier today it's like a muscle, and that the more you practice it, the more you use your confidence, the stronger your muscle grows. The more things you try and the more obstacles you overcome, these experiences build your confidence. I also have two quick fixes up here. Dr. Gallagher also mentioned visualization, so we don't have to go into that too much, but athletes and performers use this a lot. It's a mental exercise where you visualize yourself completing a task and doing it well. If we can see it, then we can believe it, and then we can do it. Another method that Reese Witherspoon uses regularly are self-pep talks, which are pretty evident. That's just reassuring words inside that counter the inner critic and help you through a nervous or difficult challenge. You can do this, just take a breath, relax, hang in there, you'll be fine, don't give up. All of those help to quiet the inner critic. Another important method is seeking external support, like you're doing here at this talk. Look at the size of this audience. You're not alone in this struggle. Are you tapping into the support around you? Human connection is a powerful resource, be it online or in person. Peer support can build in accountability and can help you reduce the power of the inner critic. The Me Too movement is a really great example of how people who share a similar struggle can come together to create meaningful change. A colleague and I have been meeting weekly on Wednesdays since the summer to help each other move along with our big goals. We provide support and we use encouraging feedback to one another to counter the inner critic. When mine gets too loud to manage, she's there to tell me, another view or to help me reframe and rethink. It's been invaluable. Creating a support system can be tough, though, I know, so I'd like to jumpstart that for you. I created a Facebook group in the last couple of days just for the people here today that I am going to moderate, and it's called Dr. Schlee's Leadership Challenge 2018. Initially, I thought it could be like a cyber version of Sarah Blakely's dinner table, a place for you to share with me and with everyone here what you failed at recently. Let's rewire your brain to not hide failures, but to share them proudly as evidence that you are trying new things, leaving your comfort zone, learning and growing, regardless of outcome. It can also be a place to share what methods you learned today that you've applied and are helpful, the places that you're stuck, the ways you're still struggling with your inner critic, all the roadblocks that still challenge you. We can pool this resource of external support right here of peers and put it to work for you. So I feel like if you're ready to step up your game and get more active in pursuing those goals, this peer group could be the push you need to get moving and to feel motivated. You can search for the group on Facebook. It's Dr. Schlee's Leadership Challenge 2018, and you can just ask for an invite and I will let you through. Or in the back I have clipboards where you can add your email address, and if you want me to send you an invite so you don't have to go finding it, just put a check on that column and I will invite you to it. There are loads of other sources of external support out there, and I want to cover two really good ones today. I'd like to start with Tara Mohr because she's really the reason that I'm here today. She's a writer, speaker, and teacher who helps women to reach their full potential as leaders. So in the fall, I came across her 10 rules for brilliant women. I read through them and really liked them and said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to commit to these rules. As luck would have it, shortly after that, I was invited to do this talk. And immediately, a surge of electricity went through me, and I gasped. And I said to myself, no way, a talk? Me? No, not doing it. Then I remembered her gasp rule. Start doing the things that make you gasp and learn how conquerable your fears are. And I realized immediately, oh no, now I need to do this talk, darn it. And so I said, okay, I'll do this talk. Another of her rules, let other women know they're brilliant. Again, how could I say no to a women's leadership symposium? I had to come here today and teach you how your inner critic is in your way, blocking your brilliance, and how to sidestep that on your path to leadership. So here I stand. Another good rule that Tara offers is question the voice that says, I'm not ready yet. And I'd like to look a little more closely at that one to help you figure how you can do that. Often, when an opportunity arises, we ask ourselves, am I ready for this? And like lightning, no, I'm not ready stands in our way, just like the electrical surge that made me say no at first to the talk. But when I was in grad school, we were taught, before you answer a question, pause, to instead question the question. You shouldn't rush to answer the first one that's posed to you, and that applies here. We know self-evaluation triggers the inner critic, and it starts that chain reaction to the roadblock of, no, I can't do this, I'm not ready. So can we question that question? What if we put that aside? We can switch to a more important question. Is this in line with my goals? Is this opportunity on the path that I want to take? If so, different answer. We can say yes to that. Roadblock removed, and we can move forward and take action toward this next step in our path toward our goals. One very powerful thing that keeps us stuck in our comfort zone is the relief we get from avoiding discomfort. A big opportunity intimidates us, we shrink away from it, and we feel immediately better because we've reduced discomfort. Let's be very clear about that. That relief is very reinforcing. It keeps you locked in a cycle of avoiding opportunities. You remember that saying, cells that fire together, wire together? Well, discomfort and avoidance get wired together as a neural pathway. One leads like reflex reaction to the other. Again, rewiring through practice, small steps at a time, can help you turn that around. Another way I want to arm you to shift your mindset about your comfort zone, Remember, and I think that Dr. Gallagher referred to this earlier, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone allows you to learn and to grow and experience skills and knowledge. Every time you choose that reflex to stay in your comfort zone, tell yourself, I'm denying myself the opportunity for growth. Stop saying, I don't know how, and adopt the growth mindset, I'm capable of learning how. Only by doing will I learn what I need to know. Along your way, you're going to see that question, am I ready? You're going to see that there are parts of that path that you were ready for. But you're also going to see that there were skills that you needed to learn along the way. And you could only learn by taking that step and moving forward. I couldn't end today without mentioning Brené Brown, because to me, she's the guru when it comes to overcoming self-doubt. She's a professor and researcher at the University of Texas. She's done 20 years of research that led her to overcome her own struggle with self-doubt and to write some very powerful books about living with vulnerability without allowing shame and perfectionism to control you. Her lessons can help you weaken your inner critic. Like, for example, the first. She says, if you walk through the world looking for evidence that you're not good enough, you will always find it because you've made that your mission. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Another idea she shared is that many of us believe this myth that perfectionism, that's my edge. That's what makes me better than average. That's what helps me succeed. And she's there to teach you that's not true. It's not your friend. It's the obstacle that keeps you from feeling confident and from challenging yourself enough. If it has to be perfect, and I don't think I'm ready for perfect, I'm not going to move forward. She's got some great TED Talks you can Google. The most popular one is called The Power of Vulnerability. It's got millions of views, and it's very inspiring. So, if prior to this talk, you thought that your fears and that inner critic inside of you were proof that you don't have what it takes, and that you can't do it, well, Nelson Mandela said something that you need to consider. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave woman is not she who does not feel afraid, but she who conquers that fear. Vincent van Gogh also said something that I thought was great. If you hear a voice within you saying you cannot paint, then by all means, that you should paint, and that voice will be silenced. To some extent, managing our inner critic will probably always be a work in progress. I hoped I've armed you with enough tools to start your rewiring so you can head down your path to leadership. Well, I'm ready if you have any questions. I have a time frame built in here for some questions. Oh, I got Patricia in the back. Oh, I do. Yikes. That went longer than I expected. Oh. Great. If you're interested in the EAP program for mindfulness starting on Friday, she has information for you to collect on your way out. Perfect. Anyone else? Yes.